in church, there could be, and I'm not thinking of them, where you could have valuable, vibrant relationships with people outside of your generation other than, it's like they kind of compartmentalize us all off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The young really aren't raised at the feet of the grandparents anymore because we're all transient.
Yes.
Right.
And then your colleagues kind of fit right in that age bracket that you're at.
usually,
Yes.
Exceptions,
Yes.
the medical practitioners and stuff, but you really figure church is like where you would pick up
Yeah.
a relationship like that.
Because even like I've said to you, I've said to like my husband and stuff, I don't know who my friends would be if it wasn't for like my church friends. Because it's like I have friends at work, but it's like we're not all necessarily going through life with the same goal. Because like Christians
Right.
have the same goal of like eternity and a
Yes.
relationship with Jesus
Yes.
and trying to tell others about Jesus. And like you might have work friends who
You
are
have things in
Christians.
common, professional things.
Yeah,
stuff
and like
that.
they might be Christians as well, but it's like that's not guaranteed. And so it's like
Right.
I don't know who my friends would be aside from my church friends.
The depth of a relationship you
Yes,
can have.
exactly.
Three-dimensional depth. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And there's something about too, like your parents, like they're doing their best to like tell you. There's something about the fact that they're your parents that
Yeah.
it just feels like intrusive sometimes
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh
Obviously
my gosh, Mom. You don't know me.
which is patently ridiculous.
Right, because they do. But, you know.
Yeah. But then it's kind of like I remember when I was a young man, like my dad could have told me something, but then my coach would have said that.
Yeah. You're like,
All of
oh,
a sudden,
man,
that's
so profound.
It's so profound.
Yeah.
My dad must be like pulling his hair out of his head. Like, what the heck,
Right.
dude? But there's something about that too at every stage of life. You know, you're like, these people come up to you and they tell you things and it's full of wisdom and they really help you.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do that. A lot of people that show up at the encounter because of the hospitals and Hershey Med and stuff, there's no parents in the area. You can see that in their eyes. That's why Kids Connection is so beloved because
Yeah.
like it's like the first thing they found where they're like
like
desperate.
Nurture for that nurturing.
You don't
sort
have
of, yeah.
in-laws. You don't have, that like safety net thing. that,
Right. Right.
So think
Yeah.
about that. You're a young professional. You maybe just got married. You just had a kid. You're both grandparents are like,
Yeah.
700 miles away.
You have no support.
Yeah.
That's rough,
Yeah.
rough riding. So church becomes a very different
Yes.
yeah.
necessity to that.
Well, because I have a friend whose husband is a resident, I guess you would say. And like he's working like 80-hour weeks.
Exactly.
And like she has a 2-year-old and like just had a baby in like October. And she's like alone for like a majority of the time. It's not even like her husband's going to work like 9 to 5 and then comes home and can help. It's like, no, he's gone from like 5 a.m. to like 8 p.m. and she's like alone.
That's almost like
how do you-
torture.
Yes, like, how do you do that?
You are on tilt, like when you have those kids, and then to not have anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
That's like
Yes.
you're sleep deprived. Now you're lonely.
Yes.
You're compounding the bad.
Right. Right.
It's not just sleep deprived. You can like literally go crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's like my friend, like if you have just one kid, like, okay, yeah, you can nap when the baby naps. That's great. But it's like if the baby's napping and your 2-year-old's like, hey, up in your face, it's like, what are you going to do? Like,
Right.
you can't sleep then. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how she does it. But after I had our second daughter, it was really, really difficult.
Mentally
And
difficult?
yes. And I was really struggling and I didn't tell anybody about it because I was really embarrassed. But like, if we ever decide to have a third child, I'm really worried that it's going to be super difficult again. And so I've actually like reached out to a couple of like older, but they're not like older ladies in the congregation, and told them about my experiences and like, if Matt and I would have a third kid, will you help me? And they were like, yes. They're like, we'll just show up at your house randomly to make sure that you're okay. Or like, we'll set up a schedule of like, this person's coming to check in on you like every other Tuesday. And this person.
That's such a
Yeah.
good
So
story.
it's like, it's
Good,
very,
great story.
it's very reassuring to know that I have that support. It's not women who are going to be judging me. They know that it's difficult. They know that it's hard because
They've
they've
been
gone
through it.
through it. Yep.
Right,
So it's
right.
just, it's nice to have that support because like we were talking about earlier, where else would I find that?
Right.
Like I can't like ask like the person who's about to retire at like the middle school, like,
Yeah.
hey, can you come to my house to check on me after I have my
Yeah.
baby? Like, do you know what I
Right,
mean? Like
right.
where else are you going to find those types of relationships?
I love that story. You're an interesting case study too because you married Adam, who's like so beloved here.
Yeah.
Beloved here. So what's
whole
interesting?
family.
What's interesting about you is like the whole family. What's interesting about you is baked into that cake I would have assumed been a smoother sail of acclamation. In
Yeah,
the church, right?
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still, and you have a really amiable personality, so it's just not a struggle for you. But like, But I wonder sometimes, like, I wonder if that's actually something we're romanticizing here, or if it's actually rubber meets the road, like, happening here. So I'm Gen X, and you guys are like, I think you guys are like, I don't know, millennials.
And we're old
Are
millennials.
you guys millennials?
Yeah, I don't know what
We're
we
like
are.
older millennials, I
The
think.
one through line I see through like all that stuff is like this. There's this like strange loneliness in everybody, but it's not loneliness like you're alone on a desert island. It's not that kind of. It's like it's got something to do with we trick ourselves into thinking we have these full lives because
Yes.
we're connected to a lot of people. Social media, you really are seeing pictures. You really are. You know,
Right.
you know. I don't know how people are dating now, but whatever that is real.
Yeah.
But the thing you guys are talking about is outside of that universe.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
Because
that would
like,
have been true 150 years ago. It's
Yeah.
like it's real community, and I think that's what they're starving for.
yes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, you can like message people back and forth, and it could be like deep conversations,
can be
and it can
calories.
feel
like a real
yeah, it can feel
relationship
deep and
and-
like a real relationship. But oftentimes it's just like, oh, cool, that person is like in Barbados, huh? But like,
Yeah, it's a
you know
lot
what I
of
mean?
that.
Yes,
It's not
exactly.
all
And so
that.
it's not like, I'm not saying they're not authentic when you're doing it that way, but like it's not
there's something
the
that's not giving
deep
you.
sitting down, like being
Yeah.
close, like physically close to somebody, and like you can see their face, you can see if they're in pain, you can like comfort them, like through touching them.
Yeah.
That like
Or
you're
like,
just not
this
getting.
person's
Like
going through the same thing I'm going through,
Yes.
and I can see that.
Yes.
Like,
You
yeah.
can tell. You can tell too if your words hurt or if they edified
Yes.
by
Yeah.
nonverbals.
Yeah.
Completely gone.
Right.
With all that stuff. But it's also just you're. I think we just. I think we have like a strange starvation going on in our midst, and people don't realize they're starving.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're eating every single day, but you're eating like rice cakes or something.
yeah.
And I can't put my finger on it, but it's got something to do with what we're talking about. I made these really cool Hispanic friends when I was in the Air Force, and then they invited me to like Hispanic Thanksgivings.
Ooh.
Right? First of all,
That's
food's
awesome.
on the next level.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
but you got you got first of all, you got
Generations.
Yes.
cousins, and then and I remember I just had a moment one time where I sat, and watched the whole landscape of it. It was truly beautiful.
Yes.
Great grandkids were like,
Yeah.
and we just for good or bad, we just don't have it.
Yeah.
And then we're not supplementing it with anything else.
Yes.
So you're just dying on the vine with this like real human stuff. I become passionate about the church family, like really leaning into that.
Yes.
'Cause I don't know that they know they're as hungry as
Yeah.
they really are.
Well, yeah, and it's like where my parents grew up, like when my parents bought their house, it was literally across the street from my grandma's house. So it's like my grandma
yeah.
was across the street. And it's like my
Yeah.
mom was one of 5, and they all lived within like 15 minutes of the farm where they grew up. And like my grandma's cousins were all on the same roads. Like you could like walk to like 5 of her cousins' house. And so it was just like, it's insane because it's like that type of like situation, like where I grew up and how they grew up was like very wholesome because you had this built-in like community where people were like checking on you and like cared about you and wanted to make sure that you were doing okay.
And both sides of the coin could call you out if you're being an
Yes,
idiot, could love
exactly.
you if you're low.
And
the
so
whole
it's like-
three-dimensional being a person.
Right.
And so
right.
like we don't do that as much anymore. Like people don't normally stay where they grew up. And I mean, like I did move away. I only moved an hour away, but like to my mom, that was like, because like she, like, you know what I mean? She was like 5 minutes from her mom and
Real
across
big
the street
deal,
from her
yeah.
mother-in-law. So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
But I hope that like once my kids are older that they'll still
think
stay in this
about that,
area.
too. I think about like our children and like, so we've removed a step from that.
Yeah.
They would have 2. And the other thing is we're real afraid of stepping on each other's toes. And some of that is really good because I think we've gotten a little better as a generation of like reading the room and figuring out. But as a side note, if you don't make some mistakes with each other, then you don't get real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I remember growing up and I had like a circle of friends and the stuff we would say to each other was so ridiculous. But also, so that was the bad stuff. But we also like would say like really intimate stuff to each other.
Yes.
Really cool stuff. And somewhere in that job lie was like a real relationship.
Yeah.
And now you got a neighbor and you just, go into the garage. You just don't want to really.
Yeah,
You
can
don't
put
really
on
want to
that
make a
face
mistake.
and-
Yeah, you're pleasant.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
You don't want to, but there's nothing there really. You
Yeah.
know? And you compound that with maybe you're doing a little bit of that with colleagues, and then and then before you know it, you got like one, if you're lucky, if you held on to something from college,
Yeah.
if you held on to something from when you were a kid, when you put that work in, and you're like starving.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, but you don't realize you're starving.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. I think it could be such a ministry for the church because it's almost like you don't know you needed it till you just experienced
Yeah.
it. It's like one of those things.
Uh-huh.
When you were in your 20s and the first person took you to your campfire and there was like good kind of campfire
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
but you never went to a campfire before?
Yeah.
You were like, where's this been all my life?
Yeah.
Right? It's like that, right? You
Yeah.
just didn't know what you were missing out on.
Yeah.
When I was in my early 20s, Christian coffee houses were so prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
It was the coolest thing. And then somewhere along the way that went away.
Yeah.
And you could guarantee yourself, you could show up at like a Friday or Saturday, and one of those would be going on at
Right.
any number of churches in like Central PA. And you would guarantee like 50 people your age or somewhat your age, they probably would have read some C.S. Lewis book. You know,
Yeah.
there was like a certain kind of person
Yeah.
that would have showed up there. That's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
how valuable would that be? But I don't know how to, it's really, this is two things come to mind. First, I think it's cool because I experienced it. But I'm worried I'm helicoptering in some 40-year-old version of cool onto
Yeah.
like because when I mention it to the young people, they say something like, this is the answer they give me. They're like, that sounds so great and I want that in my life so bad. And then they say this heartbreaking thing, but I'd never show up at that.
Exactly.
So I'm like, this is
But
the worst.
why?
That's the worst answer you could give.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't. I don't even know
What would get them there?
I don't know. It's
Like,
like
if they
a
want to come, but they're going to refuse to come. It's like, what?
Psychologically,
what is
they
the?
explained to me. They're like, I would talk. This is what was literally said to me. I pushed them, and they were like, I would just have all this anxiety about not knowing it. You know, they were walking through what they would be thinking, and then they would
Right.
talk themselves out of it. And they wouldn't come.
Right.
Yes.
Well, kids are so used to now, like they've grown up behind a screen, like
Yes.
and especially like because of COVID and everything, it was so much easier to just like, isolate
Zoom
yourself
it.
and
Yeah.
Zoom it, like not have to. And it's hard for me. Like I wouldn't think that I have like social anxiety, but like sometimes it takes like really convincing myself to like get
yeah.
out the door, like
Oh, yeah.
that makes sense to me.
and. I don't know. I think it's just like
Well, what makes you do that? That's interesting. Like, what is the is it like?
Yeah.
Is it that you've had enough experiences to know that it's worth it at the end?
Yes.
Okay, so you
and I
almost
think
need to-
maybe that comes with age, and they
Yeah.
don't know that, like, because
Yeah.
they haven't lived that
You've
yet.
had a couple turns around the neighborhood now,
Right.
And you know that it ends well,
Right. You're like, I'm
Right.
going to feel better after this, and it's
Yeah.
going to be good for me and all of that.
Can you
But
think of like how do we? Okay, two things. Am I right? Are we just pushing a product on them they don't want? Number
Right.
one, because if that's the case, then that's just me.
well, it sounds like they want
boomerang
it,
or
but
whatever.
Yeah.
Scary.
And I think too, like, this is like going back to like my college days, but it's like, I honestly think too, it's like, well, yeah, I should go to something like that, even if like I'm feeling lazy or don't want to, because you never know what's going to happen.
never
Like when you're in
know.
college, you're like, let's just like go to Walmart. And then like you go to Walmart and you like buy this weird stuff. And then like you like go back to college and you like, like pretend to like put on it like a weird skin. And it's like, what is even happening? Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So it's like, you just
yes.
never know what's going to happen. And I think that like,
That's so true.
because everything is so like you said, like behind screens and
Yeah.
stuff, it's like
you
stuff doesn't
sanitize it.
flow
You
naturally.
sanitize it all.
Right.
Make
Yeah.
it safe.
it's not
Yeah.
spontaneous.
Yes, it's
and-
not
yeah.
spontaneous.
Yeah, we're all married, but like I remember being a single guy and walking into those coffee shops, and there was a possibility you were meeting your wife that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is that's an insanely exhilarating way, like exciting thing in life, and you really only get that in one season.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
you're not swinging the bat at all, you're just missing out on
You're just
this
gonna
like
miss it, yeah.
magical thing.
Yeah.
And let's be honest with ourselves. Like you almost never met your husband. You
Right.
almost never met
The
your spouse.
majority of the
But
99.9.
But the possibility was
Yeah.
still in the air. And I mean, like you're talking about having fun with your friends at Walmart. That's the same kind of feeling. It's like
Yeah.
I don't really know how this night's going to end, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
I just wish that we could recreate that because I can tell psychologically there's a need for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't figure out like how to get through the maze.
Right.
Yes.
How to get them in the door.
My
or
heart's in the
whatever,
right
yeah.
place, but I just can't figure that out.
Right.
You know, it would almost need to be like them that were like spreading the word. Like I had this.
Yeah.
You were mentored by you, or at least to some degree. You spent a lot of time with my good friends Ethan and Om.
Yeah.
And they back in the day they just did this well. Like they would create like ambiance and environment really well. And then they would just kind of like let that environment like do whatever it was going to do. They were just gifted in that way. And I always admired that about them.
Well, yeah, and
They
I
did
think
that
too.
well.
I think too. They weren't necessarily like, "Hey, these 20 people are coming over." It was just kind of like, "Do you want to come over and hang out?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure, of course I do." And so then like you'd come over and you'd be like, "Oh, these people are here, and these people are here. This is awesome."
Very organic.
Yes.
Very,
They just
like,
open up their home.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
wonder if that's like the on ramp to this. You
Or
know?
like have like those couple of like, I feel like an old person saying this, those young people like plan it and be like you're in charge of this, and like why don't you just invite like a couple of your friends to come hang out?
and see where that goes.
Yeah,
you
'cause
almost
it's
got to
like-
start right from the soil and grow it like from the seed.
Yeah, because then then if
Yeah.
like 10 people show up, it's like, okay, great. So like those 10 people, hopefully they'll invite like 2
They're
or 3 other
comfortable
people.
now, like Abby,
Yeah.
they got like reps, so they're like, "This isn't weird. This isn't gonna kill you. This is
Yes,
fine."
exactly.
And then they like tell their friends, "Hey, you're gonna survive this. It's worth the awkwardness."
Yeah.
I think that might be it. It's like we got to go way back to basics again.
Yeah.
Which is like maybe that sounds condescending, but that might be true.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
looking into someone's eyes is not going to kill you.
Right.
I swear
Except
to you
that it
guys,
will.
like,
I'm just kidding.
Hanging out in the same room with like
Yes.
no actual agenda.
Yeah,
no
Like,
agenda.
yeah.
people poured into me, so I felt the Lord tell me, you gotta spend more time with these kids, right?
Mm.
I am horrible at it. So I'll give you an example of how it goes for me, just to amuse you.
I feel like I'm terrible at it.
But you're not terrible. I watch you. You're so. I started a conversation, and I swear to you, Abby, the last one, I was doing this. I found myself doing it before I caught myself. I was trying to make eye contact with them. I was like moving around like a bobblehead doll, and
Yeah.
I think the person was like, "Does this adult have like Tourette's syndrome or something?" Like I was just, but I don't know how to do. I was like an outdated iPhone.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how to run this software. Like when I talk to you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta have something.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you what I'm talking about. Like I want to,
Right.
but there's something like missing in,
Yeah.
in the source code.
Yeah.
So I just don't know what to do about it. And all that threads through this conversation. Like we want to we want to teach people how to connect and everything, but
Right.
there's something wrong with the, I don't know.
Kind of like
ingredients.
a story to go along with that, like in talking about how important like relationships with people who are older than you and of like the same sex. I had like a woman who was like sort of a mentor to me. She was actually a teacher in my high school, and then she went to my church. And so she sort of became a mentor to me. She was like 10 years older than me. And I remember one time we were like hanging out, we would go to Starbucks, and I like was texting someone on my phone, and she was like, "That's like, don't do that. We're sitting here having a conversation."
She said that to you?
Yeah.
She like called me out on it, and like that stuck with me like to this day. Yeah, like I do. If I am hanging out with someone, like I do not like text or bring out my phone at all. Like,
That's a great story.
Yeah.
And you know that could have been received, like an
Yeah.
attack or something, but it hit real well.
right.
It hit well.
She was like, "We're talking. This is our time. Like, don't do that." And
You're
I feel
cheating
like,
me.
yeah, and I feel like that is like not something that kids today know how to
like
do.
I guess like they need to be like open to like
Yeah.
I'm not being critical of you. I'm
Yeah.
just saying like if you want to be a polite person and if you want to make me feel
Connections.
valued,
And
can you
if you
please
wanna
put
make
away your phone?
connections. Yes.
Like
Yeah, and it didn't offend me when she said that. Like,
Yeah.
I think I was just like, "Oh, you're right." You
She was
know,
taking
like,
a chance, though.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
totally could have offended me.
That's a good story. It's like tons of relationships that adults were doing that to me when I was a kid.
yeah,
Tons of times.
yeah.
Guys, thanks for talking to me.
yeah.
So great. Went so much. You got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.